Did you know in 2021, 43% of homeowners surveyed who waived their inspection contingencies were absolutely unhappy with the home they purchased? Hey, my name's Jake DeRosa, your favorite Sacramento real estate broker. And today we're going to talk with Steffan from North American Home Services about inspections, the importance of them, what they're looking for, what to keep an eye out for. And as always, if you like the channel, please subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and also comment, ask questions. I love educating. I love sharing on my community. So with that said, let's get into it. And I have got Steffan Gilbert. I've worked with him for many years, and North American Home Services, they do a fantastic job. Steffan, why don't you kind of just introduce yourself, share with us a little bit about your experience, and then we'll kind of get into the content today.
Awesome. First of all, thanks, Jake, for having me. Love talking about inspections. I am Steffan Gilbert. I'm the Vice President for North American Home Services, as well as Good Life Construction. I've been working with Sacramento area realtors for about 25 years now. I've been licensed by the state of California to do these types of inspections for the last 28 years. I also do stuff as an expert witness in mediations and arbitrations, not in Northern California, more so in Southern California at the end of the day. So again, I'm well-versed in the practical side of doing these inspections, as well as the regulatory side, and where the reality lands is somewhere in the middle. So I'm excited to hang out and talk about that a little bit today.
Awesome. So, gosh, expert witness. That's a good person to have on your side.
Yeah.
I like it. So, one of the things that a lot of buyers, when we go through the process, we obviously educate them on our side. I've been doing this for, 21 years. So I have a lot of knowledge on it. But let's break down the most common inspections. So what I usually see are going to be your roof inspection, your home inspection, your pest inspection, and depending on the age of the house is going to be your sewer inspection, your lateral sewer line to the street, right? So why don't we touch on, let's start with a pest inspection. That seems to be, and what's funny is there's a big misconception. A lot of times people think, oh, what pest inspection, rats, rodents, but really pest inspections start digging into the dry rot, especially in our area, and any termites that are there. So I'll let you kind of explain a little bit about that. And why is it important to get that?
It is so interesting. So the nuance, the actual licensing that we have, we are licensed by the state of California, the Department of Consumer Affairs, the same folks that license realtors, doctors, attorneys. So we have to pass a test. We have to do continuing education to have this license. So we are actually technically wood destroying organism inspectors, not pest inspectors. And we are the only people licensed in the state to identify dry rot. It sounds a little silly, but there's a point there. And again, when we identify dry rot, a contractor can identify dry rot, a structural engineer can identify dry rot. The WDO, the wood destroying and organism inspection, can identify it because they have a due diligence or a job to identify what's causing the dry rot. So saying something is rotted, goes on the report, is only 50% of the ballgame. The other 50% is what's causing it, because it has to be addressed and fixed, if it can be addressed and fixed, so it doesn't happen again in 2 or 3 years, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, 100%. So you're finding the root of this problem instead of just what the problem is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's pivotal, because we go out to properties where people have tried to fix dry rot on siding, and they don't stop to think about what's happening and what's causing it. And there's a sprinkler spraying the side of the house, and 1.5 years later, there's 8 sheets of siding rotted all over again because someone didn't simply turn their sprinkler head away.
That's funny. So, one of the things And when you start going into what you talk about root of the cause, what's interesting, and as helping buyers in the past is I actually like one of the common things is finding out where the most of the weather's coming from. So I had a house where right above the garage there was the fascia, right, and that had dry rot, and it was a couple $1,000s, and they wanted to give us a credit. However, I actually said, you know what, no, I want you guys to open this up for further inspection, to have my pest controller come out. There was actually another $8,000 worth of damage. The main beam had to be replaced, and we essentially saved that client an incredible amount of money. And that kind of goes back to the source of finding where the dry rot's coming or what damage has been done behind the surface material, right?
Yes, yes. So important. So we're doing an evaluation and we get to see 10 or 15% of the collective wood that's in the house. So we're doing a prognosis predicated on the tip of the iceberg. So when we're seeing substantial damage at the tip of the iceberg, what's lying behind there? Hopefully not too much, but it's so incredibly important to make sure that you have a dialogue and or a communication with the inspector and say, hey, does this look superficial to where it's isolated to this one area, especially before it closes, versus, hey, we need to open this area up so we can see inside the wall framing, because the wood members inside the wall that's holding the building up is really expensive to fix. The wood members that are outside, the trim boards, the fascia boards, the eaves, that stuff's easy to fix. It's aesthetic in nature. It's the stuff that's holding the building up that could turn into $8,000, $10,000, $100,000 to fix, depending on what the cause is.
Yeah, and a lot of sellers, they want to do the credit, right?
Gosh.
And what's interesting though is I'm okay with the credit if we're talking about like rafter tails that are sitting there that just need to be cut back, maybe some things, but like what we just talked about, where there's a whole rotted out section and then you get behind it and that starts opening even more things up, that definitely comes into play there. So when you go do a pest inspection, let me ask you this, what are I guess let's throw section 1 and 2 and kind of what is important and what you're looking for, and then we could jump into a home inspection there.
Yeah, I love it. So section 1 stuff in traditional real estate a decade ago, a lot of the lenders wanted the section 1 stuff addressed, which is dry rot and active infestation. And again, this is it's funny, I say it out loud, the first thing, because we're called termite inspectors. So the first thing that customers often want to know is, oh my gosh, do I have termites? Everyone freaks out on the termites. They want to know if they have termites. Termites in California, at the end of the day, even when they're really bad, unless they're doing damage, is $1,000 to $3,000 to fix. It's still a lot of money, and I understand that, but it's a substantial dry rot infection can be $5,000 to $200,000 to fix, all depending on where the damage is. So section 1, we're looking for active infestation, which is an insect like termites or beetles. And again, $1,000 to $3,000. I don't care where you live in the state, it's $1,000 to $3,000. The dry rot, that's the stuff that we're really inspecting for. We're looking for water intrusion. We're looking to see if it's getting in behind the walls. That's section 1. That is the important stuff to identify and, more importantly, quantify. Section 2 stuff is conducive conditions. It's a plumbing leak. It's dirt touching the side of the house. Very simple stuff that's not a problem now, but can be a problem down the road. And then, Jake, there's section 3, and the section 3s are what's really can be a real deal breaker at the end of the day. The section 3s are what cause the mediations. They're what cause the lawsuits. It's what caused upset people. They feel like they've been harmed. And section 3 is further inspection. And it will be listed in the report. It should legally be listed in writing in the report. But more importantly, the inspector should be having a communication with the agent, with the customers, depending on who's controlling the dialogue, and letting them know, hey, we couldn't see in the garage, but that's not unusual. We don't see in the garage, and there's stuff in the garage moving around, but not the end of the world. Versus we couldn't get underneath the house because the access way is in a closet and someone put a new laminate floor down and they covered the access way. no one has gotten into the sub area. Maybe no one has gotten into the sub area in 60 years and the sub area isn't breathing. It is so important to get into the sub area because if the deal closes and no one's been in the sub area and the new owners want to rewire the house, they want to do something with the plumbing, they want to put some networking cables in, that happens under the house, and you get someone crawling under the house and they realize that there's substantial damage under the house, they're going to be upset with someone. And the termite company is going to typically go back and say, read page 11, section C. And people don't read page 11, section C sometimes because it's such a busy time. So it's important to have that dialogue to understand this is a further inspection. It is a big deal, or this is a further inspection. It is not a big deal.
And I think going to that too is, I mean, at the end of the day, the client usually they get the report sent by you, right?
Yes, correct.
But they also get advised by their agent. So
Yes.
it's super important to really, in my opinion, have an agent that's one, has your best interest in mind, and two, is experienced in that, right? To be able to see that and say, hey, because I've seen a lot of agents and miss that, right? Or they don't inspect or they don't ask for those things. And it can get, like you said, super dicey. Knock on wood, right? I've been I've learned my lesson early in life in being detailed and reading things. I gave away a pool table early in my career, so that was snuck in the contract. I missed it, but I make sure we pay attention to details now.
That's part of, in doing this with agents for a quarter of a century, the great ones like yourself, Jake, there's so many moving parts and there's such a limited amount of time, even in the current market. A few years ago, when there was 14 to 17 days to play in, that was still a short amount of time. In the current market, oftentimes there's this 5-day window. And again, trying to get these reports issued, get lending handled, get comfortable, understand the neighborhood, and process all this information, it's a lot. Even the great agents can struggle with it. So the consumers are really, really, really counting on the agent more now than they ever have to help them manage exposure, liability, price point, and the deal itself. You have to have a great agent.
Yeah. And I think luckily you guys make it pretty simple with the pest inspections. They're not super in length. They're pretty to the point. There's a diagram. Here's what's happening. Here's where we're seeing it. And here's what's going on. Yeah. So I appreciate that about that. So a couple things. Let's ask two questions. I'm going to ask you one, if you're talking to, let's say, someone who hasn't bought a house before and they're looking at a pest inspection, what do they want to look for? And then two, what's the biggest price pest inspection for repairs you've seen? Just, you don't have to tell me a property. I just want to know in a very short, I'm curious. I've never asked you that before. Just want to find out what is that big tag that you've seen? So
happens. So it's dry rot. There is a shortcoming in the inland Northern California building departments where they do extensive engineering and planning, but they fall woefully short on waterproofing detail. So we have these houses, and I don't care if it's a $500,000 house, a $4 million house, a $12 million house. The house is only as good as the waterproofing put on the house. We do not waterproof and engineer homes in California to withstand significant moisture and rain at the end of the day, because we've been in a drought for 100 years. So when we get some weather and we get some wind driving the weather, the houses leak at the end of the day. Not uncommon in some of the very affluent neighborhoods around town is this moisture intrusion that's happening under decks and balconies and going into walls where there is stone veneer, where there is brick veneer. And, we have these really fancy interiors with this highly dense sheetrock and this fancy faux painting. The faux painting has like this imperfect smooth texture, and you can't tell if there's staining going on. It's not like a traditional white flat home that we have on the East Coast or the Midwest. We have textured walls that have shadows. So in a lot of these affluent neighborhoods, there is leaking going on, that if it rained all the time here, it would leak all the time. But since it only rains sometimes for 2 or 3 months, it gets damp, and then it heats up in the summer, and it expands, it contracts, and then it sweats. It creates its own microclimate. So we have soffitted decks and balconies and soffitted walls that are sweating sometimes, and I've seen repairs $300,000 to $450,000 in the market. We have 2 jobs that are going on, one in the Pocket area and one in Placer County. Each one of them is over $225,000 because there was poor flashing detail on roof deck flashing that tied into 2 walls that tied into really fancy decks and balconies that had concrete on top, and it compromised these load-bearing beams that are holding up 3 stories of these houses. So
Wow.
it's easier for me to rebuild a house than it is for me to rebuild a house. Meaning I could frame that same house in the same amount of time as it takes me to support section by section, because we're carrying the weight of the walls and the roof now. So we have to go section by section by section and make sure that we are re-engineering things to make sure the water can't come back in again. Happens more often than you think.
Gotcha. So dry rot's big thing. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, that's pretty pricey. So, all right, let's shift gears. It's a similar thing, right? But it's the home inspection. So,
Yes.
so tell me, the home inspections, I mean, gosh, they can be up to 120 pages I've seen before. Tell me what you guys are looking for. And then also too, what the consumer should be looking for in a home inspection and what those things are.
Yeah, so really, really important thing. The home inspection industry is not regulated by the state of California. So oftentimes home inspectors belong to different associations like ASHI and CREA, like North American. We have standards that are set forth with our home inspectors. And this is this is so important. People will do a pre-list inspection. They'll do a termite inspection, a roof inspection, and a home inspection. And they want to get it done on the front end. So it's the seller. And I actually am an advocate of that, because it's good to get the wheel in motion and get everything ferreted out and have open, honest dialogue, because then things can be talked about on the front end of the transaction. Read
Sure.
the first 2 pages of the home inspection report, read the home inspection contract, because not all home inspections are done the same. Termite reports have to follow an exact protocol. The state mandates and regulates us. So it's just like driving a vehicle in the state of California. We have to do it and follow specific steps. Home inspectors do not have these steps. So people ask us sometimes to be like, hey, you guys are $100 more expensive than a competitor for this home inspection. How come you're so expensive? And the answer is they're not doing apple for apple what we are doing. North American does not do a representative sample. The association that represents home inspectors oftentimes says that the home inspector can do a representative sample of items in a building. So if there are 100 outlets, they check 50% of the outlets. Well, guess what? If you have a buyer that buys the home and they plug a lamp into one of the 50% that didn't get checked, they're not happy hearing the representative sample. I say more times than not, the home inspections that are being done today are not checking 100% of everything. North American does, because we feel like that is what the customer perceives they are getting. We are checking all the windows. We are checking all the doors. We are checking all the outlets. We are checking all the HVAC diffusers. They don't feel like, the consumer doesn't feel like, well, I'm checking some of them. So make sure that you know and understand what is in that home inspection report to see how far they've gone. Because people look at it and say, well, there doesn't seem to be too much on the home inspection report, because that home inspection report didn't check all of it. They checked 50% of it. Really, really important.
Gotcha. And what are the big things you're looking for at the home inspection? I mean,
Yes. HVAC. So there's like the big 4. There's plumbing. Plumbing can be costly to fix because it happens in these inaccessible areas inside the walls and under the ground. There's HVAC, heating and air conditioning units. The ticket on that, depending on if you're repurposing the ducting, $12,000 to $25,000. We're checking the electrical systems. people do modifications on buildings all the time, and they may or may not pull a permit on it, and they start tapping in and they start overloading. So when there's an electrical problem, the house can catch fire. When there's a problem with the HVAC, the house can be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is different than catching fire. The same thing with the plumbing. If there's a plumbing issue, price points, $5,000 to $15,000, and you get a flood. Very uncomfortable. Oftentimes insurance can help with something like that. But when there's a fire, someone can lose their life. So HVAC from a price point, plumbing, really a price point. The electrical is really health and safety, as well as really expensive to fix at the end of the day, and the roofing. Roof, again, I think everyone should get a roof inspection. We have brand new roofs that leak. The inspections do not cost that much money. And at the end of the day, even if it's a 25-year roof, if it's not applied correctly, it can leak, and that can cause a lot of damage.
Yeah. And also too, you even have homes that, I've seen a lot of stuff, as I'm sure you've seen a million times more, but you have, you have someone that puts a new roof on, they call it a new roof, but all they did was overlay the old roof, right? And there's things happening, and it's just not pretty. So definitely the majors, the roof, the HVAC, the electrical, the pests, those are all just super important and super worth it. Now let's jump to from a seller's, and actually really quickly, cool thing you guys have is you actually offer some warranties around your inspections, which I absolutely love. Can you just touch on that too, 1 minute on that and share what that looks like?
The home inspection process, we like for people to do these pre-list inspections, and we realize that it could take some time to actually get the property in the contract, on the market, in the contract, and closed, and people moved out. Sometimes when people are moving out, they're not very gentle because they're getting out of the house. So they'll hit the garage door sensor, they'll knock a screen door off, something will happen. So we offer an extension of up to 120 days where we will extend for, if we do a sewer lateral, if we do the home inspection, we offer a prolonged warranty for 120 days, added on as our own warranty. This isn't part of a different warranty service. This comes from North American. We pay for it. We do that to protect the customers at the end of the day, because things can happen. Sometimes that hot water heater just happens to fail when people are moving in and out. It happens, or the usage on the house changes. Sometimes we do an inspection on the house and there's a senior citizen couple that raised their family and they moved out, and there's not a lot of water flowing through the system. And then a household of 5 moves in and they start flushing the toilet and they start washing clothes and doing stuff. So that warranty is an added layer of performance and protection for the customer.
Yeah, that's so good. What would you say? I mean, what advice do you have for someone buying, selling, home inspections? I mean, you're the expert. Obviously, my opinions, get them, obviously, right? Make sure you get the right ones too. And when I say the right ones, there's older homes that may sewer lateral, even somewhat newer homes, because back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they used different materials. Sometimes, if I'm not mistaken, paper, like a paper way back when, but and roots and mature trees grow in and things like that. So like when I go to a house, one thing I'm really big on is especially when I see an older or an original HVAC that's 20, 30s, let's get that HVAC inspected. Let's make sure we get all those things. So any words of wisdom from you or thoughts from Steffan?
So many thoughts. Sewer lateral. We have brand new constructed buildings or buildings that have been remodeled. And if you ever walk into a new construction track and walk around, you'll see that a lot of the trades, they'll take rags and put them down into the toilet receivers because the toilets aren't in yet. The stuff isn't in yet. You'll have laborers and people who aren't mean-spirited human beings. Their job every day is to sweep up the job site. They get the job site clean. So they go onto the slab. It's in the middle of framing. Half the plumbing is in, and their intention is to sweep it up. And lo and behold, there's this really cool hole that's in the ground. And there's 2 or 3 holes. Well, those holes are the plumbing lines at the end of the day. So they literally put the debris, whether it be grout, sawdust, caulking, they sweep the debris into the plumbing lines, and the plumbers don't know it. So the plumbers, when it comes time, they put the floor down, then they put the toilet down, and some water starts to run, and we get more blockages on brand new construction than we get on mature construction. So do those sewer lateral inspections all the time.
Gotcha. That's a good tip. And you know what's interesting too is home inspections are more important than people think, especially with the insurance industry landscape that's happening right now, with a lot of insurance companies getting out of California. As you go through, and if let's say you have major issues that pop up and things happen, and let's say, I mean, even knowing between filing a claim with your home warranty or your insurance company, but if something really big happens, that could be an insurance claim, and next thing you know, you're now looking for newer, higher priced insurance, and you have a tick on your record. So super important to make sure that the house you're getting is solid. It's never going to be perfect. Let's just be realistic there, right? It's never, there's the cost of home ownership that happens. However, making sure your major things are addressed, your major things are looked at, and you got a solid house for you and your family.
That's great, Jake. So the magic, and this is something I see you do, again, compliments to you, the expectation of your customer. The successful agents should know what they're getting into, what the customers are getting into. Is it a first-time buyer and they've been saving for 9 years to get into this house? And man, $1,000 repair is going to break those people because the interest is over 6% now. And, knowing what their expectation is versus an investor, versus a guy that's a contractor who's really handy, who can kind of figure stuff out along the way. So understand the expectations of your customer, what their wants or needs are. So many people are waiving inspections in this incredibly competitive market. People are waiving contingencies, they're waiving inspections. And it just seems crazy to me because people are very emotional when they're going to buy a house. I witness it. I see people fall in love and they want the house, and the last 4 that they bid on fell out, and they just start waiving everything, and they just want to get in the house so bad, and they get into the house for 2 weeks and they realize that they have a plumbing problem. Then they realize that the air conditioner is not working. Then they realize that the side gate doesn't latch efficiently. And then all these things come up after the fact. And then they also realize they paid $20,000 over the asking price, and they get frustrated. Doing the inspections ferrets that stuff out and gets us all on the same page, and they know what they're paying for.
And you know what's funny is they did a survey, because you know how 2021 was, where everything was absolutely insane. They did a survey, and happiness of home buyers, I think like 70-80% were unhappy with the home they purchased because of repairs, because of issues that popped up, because they were advised to waive things. I have, like you said, expectations. Now, if you have a contractor who's like, I don't care what's wrong with the house, I got this, so let's go ahead and do it, versus your other person who's going to have to bring in the pros and hire everyone. I have not waived inspections in my career. I can actually say that I have not waived inspections. I've shortened them, but we made sure that you guys got out there to take a look at things. But no, that's a good point. I like that point. So, well, I appreciate you, man. Anything you want to add? Or I think we got a lot of good information today, and I appreciate you.
And I appreciate you. We've been working together for decades, Jake, and you and I have gone through some real easy ones and some tough ones. But the one thing I could say, and you are our customer, we work for the consumer also, but at the end of the day, the repeat business comes from the agent. And I have watched you stand side by side with your customer in good times and bad. I hear people brag, and again, I see this on social media, that how successful they are, the sales are high, all these different points, including industry people, home inspection companies, termite inspection companies, roofing companies, everyone's the best. A true measure of a business, my friend, is being there for your customer when the chips are down. anyone can be a rock star when it's all good, right? When the chips are down, who's going to roll their sleeves up and get dirty? That's something I've seen you do, Jake, and I love that we have this partnership together because we're there side by side with you, my friend.
Awesome. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, you guys are always there for us. You stand by your work. So couldn't agree more. And as always, please subscribe, like, comment, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks, Steffan, and we appreciate you, man.
Take care, brother. You have a good one. Thanks for having me.
You too.